Okay, guys. Firstly, a huge thank you for taking the time to join us on Friday. And today is Friday, the 16th of May, and we're joined by Alex from Torres Wines. And obviously, Torres is a really important session for this month because it is linked to our incentive that we've run for the last 2.5 months that will finish at the end of this month. So it's a great opportunity to remind ourselves more about Torres Wines, which is our current wine incentive across HGV. So, Alex, I'm going to hand over to you. And yeah, once again, thank you so much indeed for taking the time to join us today.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And thank you to everybody to join me and to invite me to explain and to explain at least to explain a little bit what Familia Torres is doing in related to sustainability. I'm going to share with you a presentation with some slides. There are a bit, maybe a lot of slides, so I will try to go quite fast. But if you have any question, just interrupt me, or at the end you can ask me any doubts. Okay, wait a second. Okay, just let me know when you see the presentation.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
No, not yet. Yeah, that's coming up now.
Yep. Okay.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, hello to everybody. As Richard said, I'm Aleix. I'm part of the climate change department in Familia Torres, and I'm going to talk a little bit this Torres on Earth program or strategy that the company has since 2008. And okay, just to have a quite to explain a little bit about the company and the family. Familia Torres is a winery founded in 1870. So with more than 150 years of history, we are making wines and we also make brandies. And we are in different parts of the world. Our origin is in Catalonia, in Alpenades, but we are also in different regions in Spain and in Catalonia. And we also are in Chile with Miguel Torres Chile and Marimar, which is Mr. Torres' sister. She's in California. Now we are in our fifth generation, between fourth and fifth generation, no, because maybe you have here, no, Mr. Torres is going to retire in the next years and the next month. So the fourth generation, her son and her daughter, Mireia and Miguel, they're going to take the company. So here, no, this a quite look of the different regions where we are. And why Familia Torres decided to start with this Torres and Earth program or strategy. It's was there was a point that Mr. Torres realized that the climate was changing, no, the temperatures were rising here especially in the Penedès where I'm from and where we have the main winery. The periods of drought are every year longer, and we also have some meteorological events that take place at moments that it's not the I don't know how to say, it's not frequent to have these meteorological events. No, for example, this heat wave in especially and very long during summer, or frost in April or in May. So all this makes that Mr. Torres wanted to do something, and also because in 2007 he 2007, he saw the documentary from Al Gore, An Inconvenient Truth, and that convinced him that at least in his company, something has to be done in order to mitigate, to adapt also to climate change, and also to convince others to reduce their emissions and make actions in order to prevent or to mitigate climate change. So, no, the Torres energy strategy has these three main pillars: the mitigation, the adaptation, and the raising awareness, no, to explain to others. And that makes the climate change now is on top of the agenda of the company, and the 11% of the profits are exclusively dedicated to climate change actions, and that's why we have the department. The main goal of the company is to reduce the carbon emissions of the company. The first goal was to reduce 30% in 2020, which was achieved. And now we are in this new goal that is to reduce 60% our carbon footprint and to be net zero in 2040. 2023, we had reduced 37%, and now it's still not. We're going to publish in some weeks, but we are in 40% of reduction the emissions of the company, comparing with the emission in 2008. And all this strategy is what makes that 2 years ago, the magazine Time they decided they make this or they decide no that Mr. Torres, or they define Mr. Torres as one of the 100 more influential person talking about sustainability in the world. So now what we do in our department, especially we calculate the carbon footprint of the company from the vineyard to all the process, the electricity, scope 1, 2, and 3, of course. Scope 3 very important to calculate, and also the most difficult part to calculate. It means to calculate the emissions from our suppliers, also the distribution, the disposal, and the final disposal of our products. And no, I don't know if you know a little bit, but just to show you, scope 1, which is in yellow, no, it's direct emissions from the company. Scope 2 are indirect emissions that come from the electricity, and in green are scope 3, that emissions that come from our suppliers. And as you can see here, it's the majority, it's around between 80 and 90%, depends on the year, of the emissions of the company. So with these three main pillars, as I said, mitigation, these are, now I'm going to explain some of the actions that we are doing. For example, in order to reduce our scope 3, we have our own vineyards and we produce our own grapes, but we also have some grape suppliers. So what we do is ask them to send their data about consumption, about electricity consumption, water, etc., and we calculate them their carbon footprint, and we give them some tips in order to reduce their carbon footprint. So we try to work together as much as possible with our grape suppliers, especially, because for them they usually are not big companies, they are owners that have some small vineyards. So we try to help as much as possible them. Another strategy that we have done is to reduce the weight of our bottles. Now we can say that 95% of our bottles they have a low weight, which is 420 grams or even less. We have tested some bottles with 360 and some bottles with 300 also. But of course there is a limit, and now we have started with some projects of reusing bottles also in some specific markets or in some specific channels. For example, with these two projects, Rebovino, that ended one month ago, that was focused in reusing bottles in restaurants, hotels. So we know we are in this point in reduce the weight, but we want to go to a new step, that is to reuse the bottles that we put in the market. Of course, some other strategies that we are doing is to have to produce our own energy with solar panels. Nowadays, more than 50% of the energy that we consume in our main cellar and in our main winery in Pansal Penedès come from solar panels and also from the biomass boiler. We have our own biomass boiler that has helped us to reduce a lot the consumption of gas. Here we burn pruning waste or forest waste in order to produce energy. Not only this, not only to produce our own energy, also to be as much efficient as possible. It means to invest in sustainable architecture, and this is an example. Our cellar in here in for Masla Plana. Later, I'm going to talk a little bit more, no? But our cellar from Masla Plana is a clear example of this sustainable architecture with different levels, with the barrels in the levels below, in order to maintain more the temperature. Also, we have this white sun in order to reflect the light, so no, to produce an albedo effect. So it helps us to maintain the temperature. But also we're going to an electricity mobility. 80% of the cars of the company are hybrids or are electric. So we are going or our way is to have full electric cars. We also have electric solar trains for our visitors, and we have made different tests with electric tractors also in the vineyard. And another very important project that we started is the carbon capture and reuse. As you know, during the fermentation process, the CO2 is released to the atmosphere. So what we are doing is that we are capturing part of the CO2 that we are generating during our fermentation process. We keep this CO2 and then we reuse it in the winery for inerting purpose. Probably you know, no, before we fill a tank with wine, no, with to produce wine, we have to be sure that the tank is clean and it's inert. So we use CO2 in order to produce this inertization. Part of the CO2 now that we are using for inertization is the CO2 that we are producing during our fermentations. And these are some examples that I gave you in order some actions that we are doing in order to reduce our emissions. But of course, we know that we are not going to be able to reduce to zero the emissions that we have. So that's why we started with some reforestation projects in order to compensate those emissions that we know that we are not going to be able to reduce. And we have a reforestation project in Chile and also some reforestation projects here in Catalonia too. And another very important project we started that also will help us to capture CO2 and means to compensate CO2 is that we are going to regenerative viticulture in all of our vineyards. Probably you have heard, and I'm not going to go deeper into regenerative viticulture. If you have questions later, you can ask me, no? But the main goal is to have a healthy soil, and this means a soil with organic matter. It means a soil with biodiversity. It means not only into the soil, but also have biodiversity in the environment around the vineyard. So, and it means to have, no, as I said, more organic matter in the soil. More organic matter means more carbon in the soil. If we have more carbon in the soil, we are capturing CO2 from the atmosphere. So with this regenerative viticulture, we know and we are sure, and we are doing this, we are capturing CO2 and we are storing CO2 in the atmosphere, from the atmosphere into the soil. But not only that, also the techniques that this type of viticulture, the techniques that we do here, no, it means, for example, to have less tillage. It means we are going to spend less. We are spending less mm, less diesel with our tractor. We are not using fertilizer. We are not using phytos. So it means also to reduce directly our the emissions. Here, no, the regenerative viticulture also involves to use animals in the vineyards. Here there are some examples. No, we have chickens in some cases. We have sheep also, and we have goats. But goats um, are more dedicated to prevent or to maintain our forests, not in the vineyards, but in the forest in order to prevent from fires. But if you come here to our main winery in Panades, we have these sheep in our vineyards, and we have also these chickens. Here is an example, no, of a vineyard some years ago with a conventional viticulture, and in the right part a vineyard with regenerative viticulture. No, I mean to having all the cover crops after a rain period. No, as you can see, there is a lot of erosion if there is no cover crop in the vineyard. So it means that all the organic matter that we have at the top of the soil leaves. No, I mean we don't have any more. But with the cover crops, we can maintain this organic matter. And not only that, there is also a very difference in the temperature if we have a cover crop or we don't. No, the temperature can be at least more than 20 degrees of difference between a vineyard with a cover crop or without a cover crop. And an example of a vineyard where we are doing a regenerative viticulture is Mas La Plana in El Penedès, where we produce one of our, well, this is the Mas La Plana estate, no, where we produce one of our best wines, that is Mas La Plana. Here is the Baltrop cellar where we are producing this. These are the barrels, no, where we will produce our wine. Each barrel is for a specific vineyard from Mas La Plana. Mas La Plana is made with Cabernet Sauvignon, so the Cabernet Sauvignon from a vineyard goes to one of these barrels, and after that we make the coupage. Here, well, some of the awards of our Mas La Plana. And going to the next pillar of Torres' strategy, the adaptation is a very important one, of course. And here, as I said, one of the problems that we have is the long periods of drought. Why we have these reservoirs. For example, this one is here in Mas La Plana, but we have also different rainwater ponds in all of our vineyards in order to keep much water as possible when it rains. And we also have some strategies for irrigation to be as much efficient as possible when we have to irrigate our vineyard. Of course, another option in order to adapt is to look for new scenarios with better conditions. For example, in some places here in Catalonia, we have going more into the north with more altitude places, also in El Priorat. And in Chile, for example, we're going more into the south. There is an option, but of course we don't want to leave the areas where we are. So here, no, there are some examples of different strategies that we are doing in order to adapt our vineyard, or in order when we have to plant a new vineyard, what we are doing. For example, the key line design, or to have wider planting chains, no, or another project very important that Familia Torres has, that is work with varieties, with ancestral varieties that these varieties are very good adapted to the conditions that we have. This project, Recovering Ancestral Varieties, uh, uh, was began in the 80s, and the main goal was to recover varieties that were here in Catalonia before the phylloxera pest. So, well, as you can imagine, to recover a variety is a very it's not easy, and we need many years. Now we are seeing the results of this project, and we have recovered more than 60 varieties, and some of these, Garro, Forcada, Gonfaus, Moneu, Pirene, and Carol, are varieties that have an enological interest, and we are planting these varieties in some of our vineyards, and we are using these varieties. And we have seen that these varieties are better adapted to the conditions that we have. For example, and now I'm going to show you, for example, in our Purgatory vineyard, we are planting Gonfaus, an ancestral variety recovered by Familia Torres, and we are using this variety in our Purgatory wine. The new the new edition, you know, of Purgatory contains some of this variety. Purgatory, as you can see here, is in the middle, no, of Catalonia. It's a more dry area, so we need to irrigate in some moments. This is the vineyard, the Araño Estate. This is the winery where we produce. It was before that it was a monastery. Well, here are some images of our winery and some awards also. Okay, and as I said, no, the last part to explain and to raise awareness. I mean, to explain what Familia Torres is doing. We promote annually events in order and conferences, especially Mr. Torres. He always, if you have heard him, he always talks, of course, about wine and Familia Torres, but he always talks about climate change and what Familia Torres is doing. We organize conferences, an environmental conference with the University of Barcelona. We are going to organize one on the next 4th of June. We also have our Torres and Earth Award for those suppliers that have reduced more their carbon emissions. And together with Jackson Family Wine in 2019, we founded the International Wineries for Climate Action, this organization with the aim to have all those sellers that are really commit with the reduction of the carbon emissions. Here, no, you can see that there are more than 170 sellers, no? Well, and there are, of course, different applicants, silver members, etc. No, but we are in more than 30 countries around the world. And if, well, yeah, and well, yeah, that's a little bit and quite fast to all this strategy and all this program called Torres and Earth. And if you have questions.
Thanks, Alex. There's no questions on the chat, but I will open the floor up to any questions if anyone has anything. It was I know you did cover it, but something that I think is really interesting is how you went about with the competition around the ancestral varieties, and do you want to just very quickly elaborate on that?
Mhm.
Maybe not.
Sorry,
Um,
sorry.
there is a question on the chat. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned from Rachel. You mentioned you were collecting emissions data. Are you able to go down to the granular bottle detail, as in how much emissions are you producing per bottle of wine made? I think is the question.
Yeah. Of course, it's not easy to calculate, but Yeah, and it depends of the weight of the bottle, but uh, it's um, one bottle of wine of 120 grams, more or less, can have an emissions, of course, depending on where it is produced, the process where which the bottle is produced, the transport, but it can be between 100 something to 200 grams of CO2. Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone in the chat? What you have done, Alex, today is show some really lovely photos of the different parts of the Torres estate, which
Yeah.
hopefully will continue to get people driven and motivated to increase their Torres sales for the remaining few weeks of this activation period. I know there's a couple of hotels that are fighting it out for top spots, and some of those are on the call. So yeah, thank you for that. Just before we wrap up, obviously this brings us to the end of week 3 of May Wine Month 2025 with our sustainability focus. 3 exciting sessions to look forward to next week. Starting off down in New Zealand with Seifried, who make our by the glass Pinot Noir. Across the Hotel of Ann list, and then we finish up the week in Bordeaux with our Bordeaux by the glass producer Chateau Pen. So 3 sessions to look forward to for next week. Unless anybody has got any other questions for Alex, I'll end the call there. Say thank you for everyone for joining us. And Alex, once again, thank you for your time. Really appreciated.
Thank you to you to invite
Thank
me.
you. Thank you very
It was a
much.
pleasure.
Thank